All right. Welcome everyone to our rights panel discussion. My name is Jason A. Grant. I'm the president of the Washington Bar Association Educational Foundation. The Washington Bar Association Educational Foundation is the 501c3 that supports the Washington Bar Association's educational and charitable missions. One of the things we do is provide financial assistance to law students through our Charles Hamilton Houston Scholarship and Chief Judge Eugene Hamilton Scholarship, as well as provide assistance to the WBA with their educational and charitable missions. This particular event is part of our mission to help educate our community. And I just want to thank everybody for attending today. Also want to thank the Washington Bar Association for their assistance, President Henry Floyd, Erin Darden, who does everything for the WBA and helps with everything, every event. So now I want to introduce our moderator for the evening, my fellow Howard University School of Law alum, Martinis Jackson. Martinez graduated from Howard Law, magna cum laude. Post-graduation, Martinez began his career at Walt, top 20 law firm, Double Voice and Plimpton LLP, where he gained experience conducting criminal investigations on behalf of Fortune 500 clients. While there, he worked with the Obama administration to file clemency petitions on behalf of incarcerated individuals serving time for nonviolent drug offenses. After his tenure at Double Voice and Plimpton LLP, Martinez spent over 2 years serving as a prosecutor in the District of Columbia, where he investigated and litigated hundreds of misdemeanor and felony cases, gaining significant motion practice and trial experience. Prior to starting his current law firm, Jackson Legal Services, PLLC, Martinez joined the law firm Milbank, where he practiced in the firm's corporate litigation group. During his time at Milbank, he maintained a healthy pro bono practice where he filed appellate briefs on behalf of criminal defendants. In addition, Martinez collaborated with Brian Stevenson's Equal Justice Institute, where he assisted the firm with petitioning the governor of Virginia for clemency on behalf of defendants serving life sentences for offenses committed as juveniles. He is the author of Justice My Way, Memoirs of a Black Prosecutor, which memorializes his take on the criminal justice system from the perspective of a minority prosecutor. As stated before, he is the current owner of Jackson Legal Services PLLC, where he represents clients in police misconduct cases, personal injury matters, and criminal defense. Martinez, it's your show. You can take it over from here.
Thank you, Jason, for that introduction. I want to start by introducing each of our panelists this evening. We have Hannah Akintoye. She owns and operates her own law firm in Washington, D.C. Our primary focus is criminal defense, and prior to starting her own law firm, she served as a public defender in Allegheny County, Pennsylvania. So we want to welcome Hannah. Second, we have Kevann Gardner. He is a public defender in Washington, D.C. In their public defender's office, which is widely revered as one of the best public defender offices in the country. Prior to working with PDS, Kevann worked as a criminal defense attorney for the Legal Aid Society in New York. And last but not least, we have Heather Pinckney. Heather is a partner at the law firm Harden and Pinckney, PLLC, where she practices civil and criminal litigation. Prior to starting her own practice, she worked as a public defender in DC as well, where she served as deputy chief of the trial division, and she's been practicing criminal defense for almost 2 decades now. So I want to start by just thanking each of you for agreeing to share your knowledge to our audience. And let's go ahead and let's just jump right in. Everybody's been watching the news about what's going on in the Black community and nationwide regarding police encounters. It seems like every week we're receiving reports of police brutality, people being shot in the back while running away from the police. In Atlanta, you had 2 college students who were snatched out of their vehicle and tased. And of course, we've heard about Breonna Taylor, or what happened to her. and obviously what happened to George Floyd. So it leaves a lot of people wondering what their rights are, how they can protect those rights, and the rights of the people they care about most. So let's open up the discussion with a question for Hannah. Now, we know there are times when you interact with the police and it seems you can do everything right and still find yourself the victim of police brutality. I think of the example of Philando Castile as a prime example. But in your opinion, Hannah, are there things that people can do to reduce their chances of having deadly encounters with police, or at least being injured by the police?
Yes, Martinez, absolutely. I think the number one, excuse that I see from police officers when it comes to fatal shootings in particular is that they thought that a person was, they had a weapon or that they were moving too quickly. So I think if anything, my number one tip when it comes to police encounters is to not make any sudden movements. I've seen so many, news articles and news stories where a person was just reaching for their wallet, or a person was just reaching for their glove compartment to get their license and their registration, and then they get shot in the car with friends and family members watching. So I think if you can do your best to not make any sudden movements, that's the biggest tip that I can give. Of course, officers are going to ask you to produce documents, so you're going to have to move at some point. I think that if you do have to make any type of movement, my recommendation would be to announce the movement that you're making. So you'll say, hello, officer, you've asked me to get my license. My license is in the center console. I'm just letting you know I'm reaching for the center console right now to grab my license. So I just wanted to let you know that, and make it very clear, and make sure that the officer hears you, so that there's no excuse from the officer later that, oh, I thought that there was contraband, or I thought that there was a gun in that center console, or underneath the seat, or in his wallet, or in his back pocket, or in the glove compartment. So that would be my recommendation.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that, Hannah. Very useful information. And a related question to that I want to pose to each panelist is, what are your rights in general when encountering police? Not just situations where, you're concerned that you might be the victim of police brutality, but let's just say being pulled over for a typical traffic stop, or if you're walking in the community, are you required to talk to the police? How is an encounter on the street different from an encounter in your car? Just kind of explain some of your rights or things that you should or shouldn't do when you encounter police, either in your car or on the streets. And, I'll pose this to Heather to start, and then each of you can kind of chime in as you see fit.
So that's the great question. So I think generally what we tell people is, right, you have the right to walk the street. The things that, like Hannah was talking about, there should not have to be this separate world where different groups have to do different things. But we're clear that unfortunately for Black Americans, it's a different world when it comes to the police. So you want to make sure, for instance, that if the police approach you, you can remain silent, right? You don't have to engage in conversation with them. You don't have to have conversations about where you're going and what you're up to and things like that. It varies jurisdictionally if you have to produce ID. Most places say no, right? It just depends sort of where you are. So you want to check on your local jurisdiction. If they continue, say, am I free to leave, right? Because that's sort of also a catalyst of letting them know that this is over for me and I'm walking away, and adding in some of what Hannah was saying, so that it's not this argument later that you just tried to walk off or run off. Your freeness is something that your lawyer would be able to argue about if and when the matter ends up in court. So you want to make sure that you're definitely asking those questions and putting that tone there, and just trying to do everything to keep yourself safe.
Nice. Thank you.
Piggybacking on what Heather said and what Hannah said, I think they both made the key points, in that you don't want to make any sudden movements. You do have certain rights. You don't have to talk. You can stay silent. That's a right that you have. You can ask whether you are detained or whether you have the right to walk away, which is also important. A lot of people think that when you are in an encounter with a police officer, you have to submit to some type of search, whether it be a search of your person, a search of your car. Well, you can object or at least say, I don't consent to this search. That's a right that you have as well. If a police officer decides to search you anyway, you know, even if you don't think they have the lawful right to search you, you don't want to resist or knock their hand away or anything else, because when you're out there, the police officers are kind of the judge, the jury, and God forbid the executioner. So you don't want to be too contentious in your interaction with them, because you want to keep yourself safe first and foremost. But you do have those rights to walk away, to be silent, to object to having yourself searched or your car searched. Those are all things that you can object to when you're in an encounter with the police.